I'm going to begin a series called Selections from the Hagakure. The Hagakure, the book of the samurai, was a collection of writings and ruminations on what it means to be a samurai and sort of the lost way of the Bushido. It was written actually by a clerk named Yamamoto Tsunetomo, who was retainer for a long time to Nabeshima Mitsushige. And it was written in the 17th century, just as the sort of the way of the samurai was beginning to be lost. And in many ways, I am personally someone who greatly reveres the way of the samurai. I think it's a beautiful way to live a life. And as a history nerd, I grew up on it. I grew up reading all about the Bushido, and I think the Hagakure kind of encapsulates really a lot of, shall we say, the essence of the Bushido in ways that I think are helpful. So I've gone all the way through the Hagakure that I have here in front of me, and I'm going to create several videos and actually read out certain portions of the Hagakure that I feel were most useful to me, and hopefully you might find them useful as well. So this will be selections from the beginning of chapter 1. Although it stands to reason that a samurai should be mindful of the way of the samurai, it would seem that we are all negligent. Consequently, if someone were to ask, what is the true meaning of the way of the samurai, the person who would be able to answer promptly is rare. This is because it has not been established in one's mind beforehand. From this, one's unmindfulness of the way can be known. Negligence is an extreme thing. The way of the samurai is found in death. When it comes to either or, there is only the quick choice of death. It is not particularly difficult. Be determined and advance. To say that dying without reaching one's aim is to die a dog's death is the frivolous way of sophisticates. When pressed with the choice of life or death, it is not necessary to gain one's aim. We all want to live, and in large part we make our logic according to what we like. But not having achieved our aim and continuing to live, this is cowardice. This is a thin, dangerous line. To die without gaining one's aim is a dog's death, according to sophisticates, but there is no shame in this. This is the substance of the way of the samurai. If, by setting one's heart right every morning and evening, one is able to live as though his body were already dead, he pains freedom in the way. His whole life will be without blame, and he will succeed at his calling. According to a certain person a number of years ago, Matsuguma Kyoyan told this story. In the practice of medicine, there is a differentiation of treatment according to the yin and the yang of men and women. There is also a difference in pulse. In the last 50 years, however, men's pulse has become the same as women's. Noticing this, in the treatment of eye disease, I applied women's treatment to men and found it suitable. When I observed the application of men's treatment to men, there was no result. Thus I knew that men's spirit had weakened, and that they had become the same as women, and the end of the world had come. Since I witnessed this with certainty, I kept it a secret. When looking at the men of today with this in mind, those who could be thought to have a woman's pulse are many indeed, and those who seem like real men, few. Because of this, if one were to make a little effort, he would be able to take the upper hand quite easily. There are few men who are able to cut well in beheadings. This is further proof that men's courage has waned. When one comes to speak of kaishaku, it has become an age of men who are prudent and clever at making excuses. 40 or 50 years ago, when such things as manatuki were considered manly, a man wouldn't show an unscarred thigh to his fellows, so he would pierce it himself. All of man's work is a bloody business. That fact today is considered foolish. Affairs are finished cleverly with words alone, and jobs that require effort are avoided. I would like young men to have some understanding of this. The priest Tanin used to say, "People come to no understanding because priests only teach the doctrine of no mind. What is called no mind is a mind that is pure and lacks complication." This is interesting. Lord Sanenori said, "In the midst of a single breath, where perversity cannot be held, is the way. If so, then the way is one. But there is no one who can understand this clarity at first. Purity is something that cannot be attained except by piling effort upon effort." Recently, people who are called clever adorn themselves with superficial wisdom and only deceive others. For this reason, they are inferior to dull-witted folk. A dull-witted person is direct. If one looks deeply into his heart with the above phrase, there will be no hidden places. It is a good examiner. One should be of mind that, meeting this examiner, he will not be embarrassed. A certain person was brought to shame because he did not take revenge. The way of revenge lies in simply forcing one's way into the place and being cut down. There is no shame in this. By thinking that you must complete the job, you will run out of time. By considering things like how many men the enemy has, time piles up. In the end, you will give up. No matter if the enemy has thousands of men, there is fulfillment in simply standing them off and being determined to cut them all down, starting from one end. You will finish the greater part of it. Although all things are not to be judged in this manner, when the time comes, there is no moment for reasoning. And if you have not done your inquiring beforehand, there is most often shame. Reading books and listening to people talk are for the purpose of prior resolution. Even if it seems certain that you will lose, retaliate. Neither wisdom nor technique has a place in this. A real man does not think of victory or defeat. He plunges recklessly toward an irrational death, and by doing this, awakens from his dreams. There are two things that will blemish a retainer, and these are riches and honor. But if one remains in strained circumstances, he will not be marred. If one does not get it into his head from the very beginning that the world is full of unseemly situations, for the most part his demeanor will be poor, and he will not be believed by others. If one is not believed by others, no matter how good a person he may be, he will not have the essence of a good person. This may also be considered a blemish. To be known as a rough fellow is rather low. A samurai has correct manners, and he is admired. It is not good to set into a set of opinions. Rather, one should search throughout the whole of his life how best to follow the way. Even a poor penman will become substantial in the art of calligraphy if he studies by imitating a good model and puts forth effort. This is just the beginning of the first part of chapter 1. I hope that there were some good and useful bits in this piece. Now, obviously, I think I want to make it clear, I don't actually advocate going and killing people to take revenge. I don't advocate violence of any kind. Rather, I look at the Hagakure and I think, yes, if someone crosses you, you ought to retaliate. Never with violence, but through legal courses, through legal channels. You must always make it clear that if someone is going to mess with you and try and hinder your purpose and your path, you must retaliate, and you must do it in the space of 7 breaths. Immediately, before you think of ways to rationalize not to do so. In this way, you will garner eventually a reputation as someone to be respected. Again, I do not advocate for violence. This is more of a mandatory disclaimer than anything. I know you're all, certainly aware of this, but still. I think that there's a lot of amazing wisdom to be taken in between the lines of the Hagakure. Thank you very much for listening. If you found this video useful and you'd like to see more Hagakure videos, please comment in the comment section below. And please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, gentlemen.